Welcome to part 15 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the cover-up and corruption that ensued. Lots of A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are involved in this story. So today we are now on to probation violation number 2 of the men in my case. So now remember, this is like a year and a half after the incident that started all this, and this is less than a year after the conviction. So we are on 9/11/2017, I get an email from the amazing DDA, who had always been really asking the great questions in court and pushing hard, despite what his supervisors were doing behind closed doors. So I get an email from the DDA, and he lets us know that there was a surprise probation home search at the Three Drizz's luxury Beverly Hills condo. And I'm talking luxury. It's one of the nicest Beverly Hills apartment complexes you can own a property in. It's huge, and it's really, 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 really nice. And they're indigent. But so there was a surprise probation search, and it was done by the Los Angeles high-risk GPS unit. They're not connected to our case. They're just an independent thing, and what they do in their day is they just pull up addresses on the computer, and they're like, oh, let's go surprise search this one. Let's go check it out, make sure the felons are in compliance. That's all it is. So they happened to pop into the Drizz's Beverly Hills luxury condo on September 6th, 2017. So this is like 5 days later, we're finding out what happened. And the email says from the DDA, he says there's a surprise home search. And this is what the GPS unit, plus there was 6 officers from the Beverly Hills Police Department. So there's a ton of uniforms witnessing all of this. They go into their 3 bedrooms that this is the house, remember, this is the address that Sean, Maurice, and Alberto gave as their primary home residence to probation. And if they lie about that, that's also a violation, okay? So they go into their home, and let's start with Sean's room. One of the Drizzes was home, not all of them. One of the twins, I forget which one, doesn't matter. But one of the twins is home, and so they're like, you better show us which one's each bedroom, okay? And so he brings them to Sean's room, and in Sean's room, they find a huge duffel bag. And there's photos of this, by the way. A huge duffel bag full of green smoke stuff, which is illegal to have at this time, especially if you're on probation and you don't have a prescription, okay? So they don't have prescriptions for any of the stuff that I'm going to tell you about. So they find a huge duffel bag. So right there, that's a probation violation for Sean Drizz, a duffel bag in his room. Then they move to Maurice Drizz's room. And in his room, they find paraphernalia to smoke the green stuff. I can't say a lot of words in this one, so bear with me for TikTok. So now we have Sean Drizz and Maurice Drizz. These are probation violations if you have this on you and you're on probation. So then we get to Alberto's room, and it's the main room because I think this luxury place is in his name. He owns it. They go to Alberto's room, and in his nightstand, which is unlocked, and by the way, they also said all the doors in the rooms were unlocked, which meant all 3 felons had access to everything in each room. So that also is very important when proving this. In Alberto's room, in the nightstand next to his bed, they find a loaded, stolen, chambered pew-pew. And they find 7, can I say this word? The things that come out of a pew-pew that can hurt you badly. They find 7 of those. 1 is chambered. So this thing's ready to go. You can pick it up and you can do damage immediately. It's not safe. And it was a 25 caliber Beretta. I think they're small. So anyways, next to the loaded stolen pew-pew in Alberto's room, next to it, they find all these rolled up dollar bills with the illegal white powder that people ingest. So we're finding multiple different kinds of illegal stuff in the house. Okay, they find it. So they bring him outside, the twin, I forget which one, and they're like, okay. And they catch him on his phone. They're like, you can't be on the phone right now because you can't call and warn people and stuff like that. You can't do that. And he's like, oh, okay. So while they're not looking, he does it anyways. And what this genius doesn't realize is that when he's sending a text, his phone repeats it out loud back to him. And so all of a sudden the police hear, I forget if it was Maurice or Alberto. Let's just say it's Maurice for just this moment. I'm not sure if it is, but they say, all of a sudden they hear his phone say, Maurice, hurry home quick. Probation is here. And so they hear it and they're like, what? We literally just told you not to do that. And he's like, oops. So 20 minutes later, the other twin, Maurice or Alberto, he comes in. So now there's 2 twins. The twins are there. Sean's still not. He's just, which doesn't matter, by the way. Doesn't matter if you're not home while the probation search is going. Doesn't matter in any way whatsoever. Those are still violations. You don't have to be home to be caught. So the other twin comes home. All of the cops bring the twins out into the front lawn, and they're like arresting them, about to bring them to jail. And they're asking them about the pew-pew that they found in the nightstand. And both twins admit to it. This is all over the documentation in multiple stuff. They admitted to it while the police were there in front of all the police. And they said, yeah, we knew it was there, but it's a family heirloom. So, I mean, it's not like it's just a family heirloom. That's what they called it. Now remember that, okay? So they admit to the family heirloom, but then they're pretending not to know what the rolled up dollar bills with the white powder is, or what the huge duffel bag, which could be intent to sell depending on how much it is, because it's a huge amount. So the twins are arrested. Sean never comes home during this search. The twins are arrested and they're brought to county jail, and they have to stay there until the hearing or the court date to talk about this, which is like in a couple of weeks. So that's great. 2 weeks to sit there and think about all the decisions they've made that have affected everybody's lives, which that they didn't use that time. Anyways. So the DDA tells us that there's going to be a hearing on October 2nd, which is 2 weeks out from now. And he says, and at this hearing, we're going to talk about the probation violation and all that stuff. And I said, okay, well, when are you going to just wait at the house for Sean to come home? Because we know where Christina Schwarzenegger lives. You could just go there because he usually stays there a lot too. And they were like, no, he didn't get arrested. We'll explain that later. Wait, he didn't get kicked out of private fancy Seal Beach jail when he failed the breathalyzer? And they let him finish, and they didn't add time on or extend his probation, for the first probation violation. And they just found all of these illegal stuff that you smoke and snort and aim at things to hurt people, and none of this. So it'll be really interesting when I get to tell you why Sean wasn't arrested and what happened at this next hearing, which we were told this hearing to deal with it will be on, again, October 2nd in a couple of weeks. So we're putting it in our calendars. We're going to show up, This is not what happened. I don't have enough time to cover it in this part, so I'm just going to do another part right now and cover it and post it. So thank you guys so much. It's about to get insane. Let me just make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay. Yeah, they were in jail. Maurice and Alberto were in custody without bail until October 2nd. That was the plan. Thank you, everybody, for all your support. We're now getting into the meat of it. And everybody who's been asking, why is Schwarzenegger in the title of your series? It's not because I think it's a great name that'll get me clicks. We're about to go into one of 4 times throughout these hearings where Schwarzenegger's name, and not just him in the family, Schwarzenegger's name is brought up 4 times by the defendants and by multiple hand-picked judges while they're making unprecedentedly lenient decisions. That all starts in this next part. I hope to see you guys there. Okay, bye. Welcome to part 16 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the cover-up and corruption that ensued. A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are also involved in this story. So for this part now, so I just went over in the last part that the 3 Drizzes, all 3 of them, were caught red-handed with a loaded, stolen, chambered pew-pew and illegal white powder and a duffel bag of green illegal plants. So these should all be clear probation violations, right? So what happens is, so the DDA said, he gave us all this information and he was like, don't worry, the twins are in county jail until we have a court date to address this, which will be October 2nd, which would be a couple weeks after we were told about stuff. However, in the next week or so, I have it written down. I have a lot of contemporaneous notes and stuff like that, but I didn't feel the need to bring them out for this kind of minutia. But let's just put it this way. We had to go about finding out the information I'm going to tell you right now. We had to go about getting it in a very offhand, not normal route of getting information about our case. Let's just say that. It wasn't freely given to us. Okay? We found out that there was going to be secret court hearings. We found out exactly where they were going to be held and when they were going to be held. And we decided to gather our friends up to have witnesses to attend these secret court hearings, which were not told to the plaintiffs. This is a huge, pretty sure that's a Crime Victims' Rights Act, CRVA, violation, like a federal crime, which they got Epstein on. So that should be interesting. I'd love to hear any lawyers out there that would love to talk about this in the comments. So we were told October 2nd was supposed to be the court date. However, we found out there was the secret court date before then, which was on November 25th, 2017. So just a few days out from this. And we found out this new court date wasn't even downtown in Judge Catherine Mader's courtroom. She's the judge overseeing all of this, but it wasn't in her courtroom. In fact, we found out that this court date to specifically deal with Alberto Drizz's, like he's the one with the pew-pew and the white powder and the nightstand on felony probation. We found out there was going to be a secret hearing to deal with his probation violation all the way across town, not downtown LA, but at the airport courthouse. And people that aren't from Los Angeles, these are like an hour away from each other. They're like just completely different. So we found out we were like, why are we going to the airport courthouse? Like, we've never been there before. Why would we go there now? We're like 2 years in. What? We go down there, and not only is it in a new courthouse with a new judge, handpicked, and this judge's name is Keith L. Schwartz. We're going to talk about him. New courthouse, new judge. Alberto had a new attorney who, by the way, her name is Blair Burke. Look her up. These guys who claim to be indigent were able to hire Blair Burke for a surprise secret hearing. Do you know who she was representing at the time of this expensive, busy criminal defense attorney? She was busy representing Harvey Weinstein for the 100+ counts of SA that he was being charged with and then eventually lost because he's just blah. But they were able to get Blair Burke to show up in these secret hearings. We get there. Guess what? We also found out that a new case number was given to this, even though it's part of the felony probation of our criminal trial, which was like BA 436 something, I forget. But the new case number for this, if anybody wants to look it up, it is, I don't have it anywhere. Yes, I do. It's SA 096430, as opposed to the actual case number, which is BA 436130. So we're sitting there, and by the way, we weren't even sure what we were witnessing, and I brought my friends, and we showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning at the airport courthouse down by LAX, and we're like, what is happening? Like, what? And why weren't we told about this? We walked in. It was me, my brother, and then several of our friends, and maybe the other plaintiff was with us too. I can't remember for this one. I have it written down. But when we walked into the back of the courtroom, and at the time I didn't know who Blair Burke was, but it was like her and another attorney and whatever. The male attorney, who was probably 60 feet away from us, like at the attorney table right in front of the judge's, whatever you call it, platform. The male attorney turned and said loudly, where we heard it in the back of the room, he said, "What the F are they doing here?" Except he said the real word. And he was like, "Ugh!" And he said that in front of the judge, and like nobody was like, whatever. But it was just so weird. We're like, we don't know why we're here either. We just know we should be here because nobody told us. And why are you here? And like, why is Sean Driz here? Like, what? But Sean Driz not arrested. He's sitting like in the regular seats with like the audience. So we're in the airport courthouse. We have a new judge. We have a new file number. We have new attorney representation. And a new DDA, not the amazing one that's been dealing with this thing for 2 years. This new DDA's name is David Shore, Schorr. And I was told to contact him if I needed information on the case and stuff, which I did. I'm still waiting for a response. Still waiting for him to email me back. Isn't that interesting? So anyways, at this hearing, we find out that, so first of all, like, they should be getting for this violation 5, 6, or 7 years in prison. Like, that's it. They didn't get that. In fact, so I'll read from the transcript. How much time? Okay. So this Judge Schwartz says, okay, we're going to take a plea today. Alberto's pleading no contest to this. So you would think, okay, he's pleading guilty. Like, okay, he should be getting something. The judge says, but I'm going to put off sentencing, and you're going to come back, and you're going to get time served plus 3 years formal probation. He says, I'm going to release you on the parole violation case, and you'll get 20 plus 20, which is 40 days credit. So now they're getting credits. Can you imagine? Please, everybody, if you know somebody that had a felony violation, tell me if they were treated the same way. He says to Alberto, you are already a convicted felon, but you're going to have another conviction when you are sentenced on this case. And now here we go. Ready? This judge, here we go. He says to Alberto, okay, so this was called a probation compliance check. You got that? Yes, Your Honor. The judge then says, they will be back. Do you know what famous governor said that? I'll be back? Yes, Your Honor. Schwarzenegger. Yes, Your Honor. Probation will be back to visit you. They are going to be back. So your house needs to be clean, swept, none of that stuff there. If you've got a .22 caliber rhymes with mullet in your nightstand just sitting there by itself, that's another felony. So you need to have your family or somebody sweep your room and get all that stuff out of there. Then he says the DA, Mr. Shore, is going to take your no contest plea to count 1 in the admission of the prior conviction, RGBI felonies. I will put off sentencing to whatever date Miss Burke would like. I will order you released on the other felony case, and I will order that downtown to my court. You're going to have a lot of serious praying and redemption next Friday and Saturday, to cleanse yourself, right? And I remember he kind of laughed on the stand. I think he's referring to it as like a Jewish holiday. And so you're going to have a lot of praying and redemption. It's like, isn't this hilarious? So he says all this, and then at the very end, okay, good, I have time. At the very end of this very quick hearing, secret hearing, the judge then says, now, I don't have control over this case in the sense that it's not in my courtroom. You're right, it's not. It's not supposed to be. He says, it's in another judge's courtroom, Judge Mater. So, Judge Mater downtown. But I'm ordering him OR released on that case. This judge has no idea what's going on yet. He's saying this needs to be, let's just release everybody, all this stuff. Then he says, ready for this? If there's any issue, he should be released. Alberto should be released in the next 48 hours. Okay? He's going to be released on my case today. But then there's another case that I don't have right in front of me. But here's the thing. And then there's a little bit of then he says, get a hold of Ms. Burke. Get a hold of Ms. Burke, and then she can run down here with me, and then I can try to expedite things to get him out. End quote. The judge quotes Arnold Schwarzenegger and asks the defendant, do you know who that is? He's the governor. He's the famous movie star, Okay, now I'm giving you credit, and I'm going to try to take the case from Judge Mater's courtroom so that we can deal with it privately in this courtroom, okay? I'll be back. It was so hard telling this part without swearing. All right, I'm going to maybe do one more part today if I can. We'll see. Thank you guys so much. That was the first of the Schwarzenegger names being brought up. Welcome to part 17 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the corruption and cover-up that ensued. Lots of A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are involved in this story. So now we are still on the possible probation violation of the raid that happened at the Three Drizz's home, where they found a pew-pew, and they found illegal white powder on rolled-up dollar bills and a duffel bag of illegal green plants at that time in Sean Drizz's room, like a huge amount. Could have been intent to sell. So we start off this case, and now we're back in Judge Mater's courtroom. This is the court date, October 2nd, 2017, that we were told about, because that's how you're supposed to, it's on the record. So the last hearing and the last part, that was secret. This one's on the record. This is the actual hearing where all three Drizzes should have been arrested and showed up too. But only Maurice Drizz's attorney was there, because Sean Drizz never got arrested in the first place. I'll tell you why soon. We were told why. And Alberto is not here because Alberto was able to get Blair Burke, Harvey Weinstein's attorney, to get him a secret private hearing in the airport courthouse in a different jurisdiction. Somehow. Who knows? I'm sure it's not corruption. So, we're in front of Judge Mater. Maurice's attorney is Mark Worksman, and we've got the amazing DDA who's been on this for 2 years. So we start off immediately, and the judge I'll just say it. So she goes, frankly, I'm puzzled by a lot of different things that have happened, including the fact that factually there seems to be discrepancies as to what went on. She mentions that it's in the report written by the police probation that both Drizz twins, Maurice and Alberto, admitted to knowing that the pew-pew was in the house. They both agreed and said it was just a family heirloom. It's not like something you get off the streets, whatever. It's just a family heirloom. However, pew-pews have a serial number on them, and all you have to do, a police officer can just look it up in the system and you can find who the registered owner is. They did that. It was a woman who lived like an hour or two south of LA. She even came and testified at court in the next hearing. And she said, yes, she legally bought the pew-pew in the mid-90s, and then it was stolen like a few days after or something like that, really quick. And then she immediately reported it stolen when that happened. So she has nothing to do with the case, but she proves now that the twins were clearly lying about it being a family heirloom. So then the judge says, okay, well, I also find it totally bewildering about this case is that there was a new case number filed, which is SA096430. The judge then mentions, also, Alberto, in the other hearing, the secret hearing, Alberto had an attorney that apparently came right into court there and pled him, Blair Burke, who was representing Harvey Weinstein, the serial assayer. And the judge over there, Judge Schwartz, never contacted me with respect to a violation of probation and apparently handled it as his case, which is, the whole thing is rather irregular, end quote. Illegal, irregular, there's a lot of ways to describe all of this. Okay, so they just kind of go over what happened at the raid. They found all the stuff. I already went over all that stuff. And that Beverly Hills Police Department is the one who filed the separate case. So I think there should be something people should be looking into the Beverly Hills Police Department now. Okay, so Alberto actually, at this secret case where they gave him a little tappy tap on the wrist and then quoted Arnold Schwarzenegger's "I'll be back" quote to him and asked him if he knew exactly who said that, and he was like, "Yes, Your Honor." And so they gave him the super lenient sentencing. He was given 40 days, but he did 20 or 27, and then he was released for the probation violation from the other court in the different jurisdiction with a whole new slew of people running the case. So the DDA, the amazing DDA, he gets up and he actually says that he was never notified of the airport court hearing. So the judge wasn't, the DA wasn't, the victims weren't. This is so illegal. This is so dehumanizing. This is so, you have no idea how much I went through mentally and emotionally, which then affected me physically, on finding out that no matter how much evidence you have in the world, you have medical records, you have security camera footage, you have witnesses that are strangers you've never ever met testifying for you, and their words are changed so that you don't have a star witness. You have evidence. They're failing breathalyzers on felony probation. They're caught with the white powder and a loaded chambered pew-pew by a slew of officers. And none of it mattered. And all I could think when I found out all of this was, I do not matter. I'm less than a human being. I don't know the right people. I don't have the right amount of money to fight back. I'm silenced. I'm nothing. I remember thinking that every single day, watching time after time after time, watching my rights go out the window. And I remember thinking too that I thought, if I could find out how much the Drizzes were paying Thomas Mesereau and Mark Worksman and Blair Burke and Robert Shapiro, if I could find out how much they paid for them, that's the number. That's how much I cost. That's how much it costs to do whatever you want to my body. If you can pay that, you can get away with it, and no one will ever care. I'm all hot now. And this goes on. We're only in 2017, and I have crimes all the way up until the last week. Okay. So Maurice's attorney, Mark Worksman, then talks about how this incident, the raid, happened at Alberto's 4,000 square foot, 4-bedroom condo in Beverly Hills. Luxury, luxury, luxury. And the judge actually says, well, wait a second. I was told they're indigent. It was represented that they've lost everything. Yeah, it was. They're just pretending. So then he kind of says, well, he kind of blah, 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 he kind of leads her away. They always get vague when they don't want to talk about something. So what the main thing is Mark Worksman then says, well, my client Maurice, he denies ever uttering it was an heirloom. So now they're saying all the police officers that were present, the 6 Beverly Hills PD that were there, that all of them lied when they said it and wrote it into the report. The probation, everybody lied, but Maurice, trust my client, he says he never said it. So the DA's office only filed charges against Alberto. They didn't even arrest Sean. They didn't even arrest Christina Schwarzenegger's boyfriend. And I'm going to get to that. God, I wish I could I'm just going to go in chronological order as we find out things, not as I know them now. I hope that's the easier way to do this. Whatever. We're just going to do it. So then his attorney starts to kind of like name drop a little bit. And he says, look, yeah, he goes, Alberto went to court with an outstanding attorney in the secret court hearing, who I've known for many, many years with impeccable integrity, Harvey Weinstein's attorney, who is actually in court today, Blair Burke. They said that Alberto, in the other court date, was sentenced to 40 days county, but 20 was the time served. And then they decided, and then he says, and my client, Maurice, in the meanwhile, he's an observing Jew, and he's been in custody now for 26 days through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So now they should be released because one has sleep apnea and the other one has diabetes and the other one has some holidays to get to that he's suddenly religious. So we're using these now as part of their defense. And he says that probation says that they should be given credit for time served and immediately released. Probation said his sin was really one of not inquiring or being more diligent in learning whether there was contraband in the home. That's the sin. That's a felony probation violation. So they say Alberto took full responsibility for the pew-pew. Why not? I mean, he got let off, and the judge warned him that probation will be back, just like the governor said. And the judge says, this Judge Mater says, you're right, you know what, this should be resolved. And I do agree with you. The fact that Alberto's out, Maurice should be out too. And then she says, I think that good lawyering was involved, but there was a breakdown on a lot of different levels, not only from the DA's office, but from what I can see, judicially. So she admits that something is really, really wrong in the water. We're at the end of our time in a second. So she also says, the judge says, we handle our own probation violations. And if we don't, we generally don't contact the other court and ask. So I had no idea about any of this. And then the judge says, I have no problem releasing him. I'm going to set a hearing and deal with some other discrepancies. It's all the time I have right now. I'm going to just film the other one and post it tonight. All right. Thank you guys so much. We have a lot more violations to get to. Welcome to part 18 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story of surviving an attempted unaliving and the corruption and cover-up that ensued. A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are also in this story. So right now we are still going over the court proceedings to talk about the felony probation of 3 of my attackers, Sean Driz, Alberto, and Maurice Driz, all family members, and how the police found a loaded, stolen, chambered pew-pew and multiple kinds of narcotics in their entire household, where all 3 had access to on felony probation for a violent crime. So we're doing Maurice Driz's hearing, which is in the regular downtown court, the one that wasn't kept secret like his brother Alberto's in the airport court. So we're in downtown, Judge Mater, and I'm continuing from the same court date from part 17. So the judge says, she's like, okay, so let's deal with Maurice. And she's very befuddled as to how a new case number, a new judge, and a new jurisdiction took over Alberto's probation violation. So she actually says, and I'll repeat what I said at the last one, in the last part, where she says, the judge, there was a breakdown on a lot of different levels, not only from the DA's office, but judicially. And then she proceeds to release Maurice, not add any prison time, not give him anything. She just releases him because her standing is, well, if they released him in that, illegal secret court hearing in downtown or in the airport court, then we can't keep Maurice. So they're putting them in different jurisdictions illegally, and the judge just says, well, whatever, I guess if that illegal thing's happening and they said this, then we'll just release him. So this is how the system works, apparently. So she also says, but we also need to have a hearing to talk about the family heirloom, which is what the Driz brothers told all the police officers during the raid, that it was not just a stolen whatever, it's a family heirloom. And the judge says the gun is either an antique heirloom given by a family member, as they claimed, or it's a loaded pew-pew in the nightstand, which makes it a very different situation. Different how? You literally found out that it was a very different situation. We went through the evidence, as I'll do in the next parts, and you still released him and didn't give him any prison time. So I don't understand what she means there. Then she says, the judge who's been dealing with the violent criminals in my case, with multiple plaintiffs and victims and multiple injuries, and she actually says, and I quote, I've got no interest in keeping your client in custody. And at that point, she says, okay, well, the airport court, Judge Schwartz, they're trying to take this case away from us. Which she should be like, are you kidding me? Absolutely not. That's, again, it's a judicial breakdown and a DA's office breakdown. So maybe correct it. It's your job. Like, we're taxpayers. We're paying her to do her job. I don't know. Call me crazy and a romantic. But so the amazing DDA asks the judge, he says, okay, well, don't you want Alberto's case back then, since it shouldn't have been in the airport court and it shouldn't have a new case number, all that? You want it back, right? And the judge says, the one who's got our lives in her hands, says, I'm fine either way. I have no personal interest in resolving or not resolving that question. Another like notch in the belt of not feeling like a human being, having somebody with the power to protect us and society and saying, I don't really can't swear on this. I don't really care, like that's her kind of whatever. So the DDA says, well, look, it's not only a loaded pew-pew, it was chambered. There's one in the chamber. That's a whole other level beyond a loaded pew-pew. It's ready for use, which again would fly in the face of antique heirloom. That is such an amazing point that he made. And so the judge says, well, the court's letting, and so he said, the DDA says, the court's letting Maurice out because his brother is out. Now, then he reminds the judge, it's a loaded, chambered pew-pew and narcotics found inside all three Drizz's home on felony probation for a violent crime. He then reminds the judge there were problems on probation with him drinking before jail, all three of them. So then he says, and I love this, Your Honor, at what point are we going to say enough is enough and keep him in custody? I feel like everybody who's following me here on TikTok agrees. Everyone. As you see all the corruption and evidence laid out, it's like it feels redundant to keep saying it, but I'm not even repeating stuff. I'm just saying each new coincidence, each new crime, everything. There's just so much that it just feels like a lot. So then the judge says, well, when there's proof, I determined there was no probation violation because they had not been clearly told to not arrive at jail with alcohol in their systems on felony probation for violent crime. You're not supposed to have it in your system when you're on felony probation, let alone be in a picture with it. So then the DDA says, well, I don't know if I can say this, the green plants, that people smoke, that without a prescription cannot be lying around the house in a duffel bag. Where the judge responds, she just keeps taking these guys' side as if she's their attorney almost. And the judge responds, it says garbage bag. It was very unclear. And the DDA he's like, I have pictures. Like, stop it. Just stop. I have pictures. Stop assuming things that you don't know to take the defendant's side to keep them free. So that was insane. He's just totally coming with the facts and the receipts. And the judge keeps going, well, nobody told them, not to father children with a goat. Nobody told them. So then the judge says, well, that wasn't in his possession either. It was the third prior defendant's room. That would be Sean Drizz's room, the duffel bag of the green plants. Again, you can't have illegal drugs without prescriptions and illegal drugs and pew-pews in your home if you're a felon. Please ask every attorney, you guys. Ask every attorney anyone studying law, anyone who's a felon or a former felon or anyone. Please ask. I would love to hear your stories on what their treatment was when they violated probation. I would love to know what precedents there are for this, because this is insanity. So, okay, so we're going to wrap this up quick. So then the judge says, oh, and I want to, if I didn't, add the narcotics condition on probation. We're now like multiple hearings and to discuss multiple probation violations. And we're in, we're November. We're in we're in October 2017. This is like a full year after the sentencing, conviction, everything. And nobody thought to just assume or write in the probation just saying, hey, you're not supposed to have white powder next to a loaded, stolen, chambered pew-pew in your home. Like, nobody, they're all pretending to be dumb. And they're not dumb. They're awful, but they're not dumb. So then, that's the end of the hearing. And immediately after this hearing, this amazing DDA who had been on our case for like 2 years at this point, he was immediately removed from the case immediately after this court date. Like, didn't even leave the building. He was told that he was transferred to a new unit. And at that point, he sent me an email saying, well, this is the new DDA that you'll be dealing with. This guy named David Shore, who I immediately emailed for information and blah, 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 blah to communicate with. And he's never emailed me back. He actually had somebody else email me back. Somebody connected to Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm going to go over that in the next part. Thank you guys so much. Oh my God, under 8 minutes. Okay, I did it. Thanks. Please, again, I would love to hear any stories or precedents and stuff like that about what your experience or your loved one's experiences are with felony probation violations. Thanks.